My beloved brothers and sisters, life is a winding road filled with shadows and light, trials and triumphs. And yet within the stillness of our homes there are places where spirit rests, where energy gathers, and where God Himself breathes peace into weary souls. The home, that blessed sanctuary, is more than brick and stone, more than walls and windows. It is a sacred temple where love must dwell, where faith must flourish, and where the Spirit of God must find a dwelling place. Now, hear me well. In every home there is a corner, a sacred corner. It may not be adorned with gold or lined with jewels, but it is sacred because it is where you invite heaven to touch earth. It is the place where prayers rise like incense, where tears are dried, and where hope whispers, "Hold on a little while longer." And I tell you, as our ancestors told us, that there are elements in this earth, simple, humble, everyday things, that God fashioned not only for the nourishment of the body, but also for the protection of the soul. One of those elements is salt. My dear beloved, when I speak of a sacred corner in your home, I do not speak of a place built by architects or a space designed by the hands of decorators. I am speaking of something more tender, more ancient, more profound, for every dwelling. Whether it be a palace with golden pillars, or a small room with bare floors, holds within it a place where the soul can rest and breathe. That place may be hidden in the shadow of your living room, or it may shine with light by a window where the sun kisses the earth at dawn. It may be the quietness of a bedroom where tears fall in secret, or the space near the doorway where you whisper your goodbyes and your welcomes. It does not matter where it is. What matters is that the Spirit of God has chosen it as a meeting ground, a little altar in the house, a sacred corner where heaven stoops low to kiss the earth. This corner does not need expensive ornaments to make it holy. No chandelier must hang there, no silken rug must be spread upon it. The holiness of this corner does not come from what you put into it, but from what you allow God to pour into it. It becomes sacred because you bend your knees there. It becomes sacred because your prayers rise like incense from that spot. It becomes sacred because in that quiet place you meet the God who created you, the God who holds you, the God who never forsakes you. Think for a moment of our ancestors. Long before the world was crowded with noise, before cities swallowed up the stars, they knew the value of sacred space. They made altars and tents, they built them under trees, they marked them with stones by rivers. These altars were not made to impress men. They were made to remember God, and so it is in your home. You may not raise a monument of stone, but when you choose a corner, a place to whisper gratitude and to call on His name, you have made an altar. You have marked holy ground. Oh, child, you may say, I live in a small place. I do not have the luxury of choosing a corner. Let me tell you, the size of the space does not matter. For holiness has never been measured in inches or in square footage. Holiness is measured in intention, in reverence, in the willingness of the heart to make space for God. Even a single chair in a room, even a small mat in the corner, even a space at the foot of your bed can become holy when you declare it. So in the name of the Lord. And why a corner, you ask? Because the corner represents a meeting point. It is where two walls join together, where strength converges, where support is multiplied. A corner embraces you, holds you, and shelters you. And so when you kneel in that sacred corner, it is as if the walls themselves are wrapping you in safety, as if your prayers are being caught and held until they rise to the throne of God. Now listen closely. That sacred corner is not only a place to pray for blessing, it is also the place where burdens are laid down. You do not need to carry your troubles into every room of your house. You can choose to deposit them in the corner and leave them at the feet of God. The sacred corner becomes the meeting place of surrender. It is where you lay your pain, your questions, your struggles, and your hopes. And in return you rise lighter, freer, stronger. This is not superstition, no. This is sanctuary. This is remembrance. This is covenant. For when you honor God with even a small space in your home, you are declaring to the unseen world, this house belongs to the Lord. Every wall, every doorway, every window is under His covering. And no matter what darkness may try to creep in, the sacred corner will stand as a sentinel of light, a testimony that God has a dwelling place here. Do not think for a moment that God requires cathedrals before he moves. Do not imagine that angels only visit places adorned with gold and marble. Oh no, child. God came to a manger. God rested in a stable. God sat with fishermen and walked dusty roads. God will come into your corner, your humble corner, if you will only open the door of your heart. I must tell you too that the sacred corner is not just for you. When you pray in that corner, the blessing spreads. It moves through the air and into the rooms where your children sleep. It hovers in the hallway where laughter and footsteps echo. It rests at the doorway, greeting every soul who enters. One person's faith in the corner can become protection for the whole household. There is also a mystery in that sacred space. Over time, as you return again and again, you will find it easier to pray there. The air itself feels different. Peace lingers in the silence. Tears come more freely and comfort comes more quickly. This is because every time you pray there, you are building an atmosphere, a well of spirit that grows deeper with each prayer. The sacred corner remembers your cries, your songs, your whispers to God. And in remembering, it becomes charged with his presence. Now I urge you, do not neglect this. In the busyness of life, in the noise of television and the glow of screens, make room for silence. Make room for reverence. Mark that corner with intention. Let your children see you pray there. Let them know that in this home there is a place where God is always welcome. Let them grow up understanding that prayer is not confined to Sunday mornings, but lives and breathes within the very walls of their dwelling. And let me remind you, it does not have to be complicated. You may sit quietly with folded hands. You may sing softly a hymn your grandmother once sang. You may pour out your heart in words, or simply let your tears fall. God hears it all. The sacred corner is not about performance, it is about presence. It is about the courage to turn aside from the world for a moment and meet the one who made the world. So, beloved, I say to you, find your sacred corner, dedicate it with prayer. Return to it often. Let it be your hiding place when life feels too heavy, your well of strength when courage runs low, your throne room of gratitude when blessings overflow. And know this, that corner is not small. No, it stretches to heaven. It connects earth to eternity. It may look like 4 walls and a floor, but in the spirit it is a ladder reaching up to the very heart of God. And so when you put salt there, when you pray there, when you believe there, you are not just tending to a corner of your home. You are tending to a corner of your soul. You are declaring that in this house, God reigns. In this house, peace lives. In this house, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. My dear friend, go and find that corner. Let it be sacred. Let it be yours. Let it be God's. And then stand still and see the glory that will follow. Salt, my beloved, is one of those gifts from the earth that we too often take for granted. It sits humbly upon our tables, it seasons our food, it preserves our meat, it stings the tongue and yet heals the wound. But salt in its quiet simplicity is more than a substance to be sprinkled and stirred. Salt is memory, salt is covenant. Salt is a bridge between the visible and the invisible, the natural and the divine. When the scriptures say, "You are the salt of the earth," they are not simply speaking about flavor. They are speaking of identity, purpose, and power. Salt, you see, does not lose itself when it is used. It does not disappear without leaving its mark. It changes everything it touches, and so must you, and so must your home. Salt has always been a sign of permanence. In ancient days, when 2 people made a covenant, they would exchange salt. Why? Because salt does not spoil. It lasts. It endures. To eat salt together was to promise faithfulness, to swear loyalty that could not be broken. This is why the Bible speaks of a covenant of salt, a promise that stands through generations. So when you look upon salt, you are not just seeing tiny grains, you are beholding a symbol of God's eternal faithfulness. You are holding in your hand a testimony that what God promises He will not fail to do. And yet salt also preserves. Long before there were refrigerators and freezers, people leaned upon salt to keep food from rotting. With salt, the meat stayed fresh, the fish remained good, the harvest endured. Do you see the lesson here? Just as salt kept decay from creeping in, God calls you to keep decay from creeping into your spirit, into your family, into your home. With prayer and faith, salt becomes a sign that corruption will not have the last word. Sin will not consume you. Darkness will not spoil what God has blessed. Salt also purifies. Drop it into water, and it drives away bitterness. Lay it upon a wound, and though it stings, it heals. This is why the prophet Elisha, when he found a spring of water that was bitter and barren, took salt and threw it into the spring. And the waters were healed, and life returned to the land. Ah, beloved, this is what salt means when it is in the hand of faith. It means that what was bitter can be made sweet. What was barren can be made fruitful. What was broken can be restored. Salt is a testimony that healing is possible, that God can turn sorrow into joy, that even the most painful wound can be cleansed and made whole. But do not miss this. Salt also protects. Our mothers and fathers knew this. They would sprinkle it at the doorway, not because they worshipped salt, but because they knew it stood as a barrier, a line drawn between what was welcome and what was not. Salt, when blessed, carries the memory of covenant, the spirit of protection. It is not magic, no. It is not superstition. It is a symbol, a vessel of faith, a reminder that God himself stands guard over your house. And if God be for you, who can be against you? And so, when I tell you that salt is more than seasoning, I am telling you to look deeper. See with spiritual eyes. The world will see only tiny crystals. But the believer will see covenant, purity, protection, healing, preservation. Salt is a sermon in itself, preached silently from the earth to the heavens, declaring that God keeps his promises. There is also something wondrous about how salt touches everything without fanfare. It does not shout. It does not demand applause. And yet its presence is undeniable. A meal without salt is bland, empty, unfulfilled. Just a pinch, and suddenly life bursts forth in flavor. In this way, salt is a lesson to the soul. It teaches us that our power is not always in our loudness, but in our presence. It is not always in what we say, but in the spirit we carry. You, child of God, are called to be salt, to enter rooms quietly, but change the atmosphere, to walk into despair and bring hope, to step into bitterness and bring sweetness, to be the difference that may not be seen with the eye, but will surely be felt in the heart. Think also of salt's humility. It dissolves. It gives itself away. It disappears into the stew, into the soup, into the bread. You may not see it, but you will taste it. And so must we live. Not always seeking recognition, not always demanding to be seen, but willing to dissolve in love, to disappear in service, to leave behind a trace of goodness that lingers long after we are gone. Salt teaches us to love without measure, to serve without vanity, to bless without boasting. And yet, salt warns us too. For if salt loses its savor, it is good for nothing but to be trampled underfoot. A Christian without faith, a home without prayer, a life without God's presence, oh, they lose their power, they lose their essence. Just as food without salt is lifeless, so too is a spirit without faith, a home without devotion, a life without God. The warning is clear. Do not lose your salt. Do not lose your purpose. Do not forget who you are and whose you are. So, my beloved, when you hold salt in your hand, hold it with reverence. See it as more than mineral. See it as memory. See it as covenant. Remember that God has placed you as salt in the earth to preserve, to purify, to protect, to flavor, to heal. And when you place that salt in the sacred corner of your house, you are not performing some empty ritual. You are declaring covenant. You are invoking preservation. You are calling upon purity. You are laying claim to protection. You are remembering God's promise to you and to your family. Do not despise the small things, for God has always chosen the simple to confound the mighty. A shepherd's sling brought down a giant. A widow's oil filled every vessel. A mustard seed moved mountains. And salt, yes, even salt can be a vessel of blessing. Let your eyes be open, child. Let your spirit be awakened. The next time you see salt, whisper to yourself, I am the salt of the earth. I am called to preserve. I am called to protect. I am called to heal. I am called to flavor this world with the goodness of God, and then go forth and live it. Sprinkle it in your sacred corner. Sprinkle it in your heart. Sprinkle it in your deeds, your words, your prayers. Let your life taste of covenant, of faith, of everlasting promise. For salt, my friend, is more than seasoning. It is a symbol of the eternal God, who keeps his word, who heals what is broken, who preserves what is holy, and who shelters what is his. And if you dare to believe, if you dare to pray, if you dare to see beyond the ordinary, you will find that even the smallest grain of salt carries within it the whisper of heaven. My beloved, hear me well. Salt by itself is but a mineral, a grain drawn from the womb of the earth or the depths of the sea. It can sit upon the table, it can line the jar, it can glimmer in the light, but without faith, without prayer, it remains lifeless, mute, and powerless. Salt without prayer is salt without breath. It is only when you join it with your voice lifted to heaven, with your spirit bowed low before the Almighty, that the common becomes extraordinary, that the ordinary becomes divine. We live in a world that is hungry for miracles, but often blind to the way they come. We imagine God will always work in thunderclaps, in fire from the sky, and earth-shaking wonders. And yet most times God moves through the simple, the overlooked, the humble things. A boy's lunch fed thousands. A shepherd's rod split the sea. A jar of oil kept pouring until the vessels overflowed. And in your house today it may be that the miracle rests not in golden vessels, not in costly ornaments, but in a little pinch of salt joined with a whispered prayer. You see, beloved, salt without prayer has no direction. It is like a ship without wind, like a body without soul. It can season food, yes, but it cannot season life. It can preserve meat, but it cannot preserve peace. It can heal a wound, but it cannot heal a heart. Only prayer, only faith, only the Spirit of the living God can awaken the deeper power hidden in salt. Prayer is the breath of the soul. It is the bridge that carries our need to heaven and brings heaven's answer back down to earth. When you pray over salt, you are not enchanting it. You are consecrating it. You are setting it apart. You are asking God to take what is natural and wrap it in the supernatural. You are saying, Lord, let this salt stand as a reminder of your covenant. Let it be a symbol of your presence in this house. Let it drive away every shadow, every spirit of unrest, every force that does not bow to your name. And I tell you, when prayer and salt join hands, darkness must scatter, peace must return, and God's glory must dwell. Think of it this way. The salt is the vessel, but prayer is the fire. The salt is the lamp, but prayer is the oil. Without prayer, the salt is just sitting still. With prayer, it becomes alive with God's purpose. This is why Jesus prayed over loaves and fish before he multiplied them. This is why Elisha cast salt into bitter waters with a declaration of healing. This is why our mothers, our grandmothers, prayed as they worked, sang hymns as they cooked, whispered blessings as they sprinkled salt upon thresholds. They understood, and we must understand too, that prayer awakens the power in even the smallest things. Do not let anyone deceive you, beloved. The strength is not in the ritual itself, not in the act of placing salt alone. If you place salt without faith, it is only a habit. If you sprinkle it without prayer, it is only dust. But when you place it in that sacred corner and your heart bows low, when your lips call on the name above every name, when your tears water the ground as you speak to God, then salt becomes a testimony. It becomes a vessel carrying your faith, a signpost pointing to God's covenant, a reminder that your house belongs to the Lord. And oh, what a gift it is to know that God listens. When your hands tremble and your voice is weak, he still listens. When your words falter and you can only whisper, he still listens. When you can do nothing but lay your burdens in silence, he still listens. And when he listens, he moves. Not always in the way we expect, not always in the time we demand, but always in the way that is perfect. Salt joined with prayer can change an atmosphere. Have you ever noticed how a room feels heavy when anger has been there? How the air feels thick after words of hatred are spoken? Just as that heaviness lingers, so too does the fragrance of prayer. When you pray over salt and set it in the sacred corner, you are declaring peace over your house. You are cleansing the air not with chemicals but with covenant. You are filling the walls not with echoes of strife but with whispers of grace. Prayer makes the salt a sentinel of peace. And I must tell you this, child, salt and prayer together not only protect but also remind. Each time you pass by that sacred corner, each time your eyes fall upon the salt, you remember, God is here. His covenant stands, His promises are sure. You are not alone. The salt becomes like a memorial, the way stones were set up at the Jordan to remind the children of Israel that God had brought them through. The salt says to you, remember what God has done. Remember who God is. Remember who God is. Remember whose house this is. Now understand also the humility of this act. Salt and prayer together teach us that holiness does not demand extravagance. You do not need grand rituals, costly objects, or complex words. All you need is faith. All you need is sincerity. All you need is a heart that says, Lord, I welcome you here. For what God desires most is not the extravagance of the ritual, but the authenticity of the worshiper. He desires your heart more than your ceremony. He desires your faith more than your performance. And so, beloved, I call you today, do not let your salt be without prayer, and do not let your prayer be without heart. When you stand in that sacred corner, lift your hands with reverence. Place the salt not as a charm, but as a covenant. Speak over it not in superstition, but in faith. And say, Lord, bless this house. Protect these walls. Let joy dwell here. Let angels guard this threshold. Let every plan of the enemy fail. Let every blessing you have ordained come forth. Oh, when you pray like that, the salt becomes more than mineral. It becomes a mirror of heaven's covenant, a whisper of God's faithfulness, a sign that His presence abides with you. And then when the storms come, and they will come, you will stand unshaken, because you have declared that your home rests in the shadow of the Almighty. Salt with prayer preserves peace. Salt with prayer heals bitterness. Salt with prayer protects from evil. Salt with prayer testifies of covenant. Salt with prayer reminds you daily that the God who parted seas, who calmed storms, who fed multitudes, is the same God watching over your house. So I urge you, beloved, when you take that salt into your hand, let it not be empty ritual. Let it be holy offering. Pray over it, consecrate it, speak life into it, and then place it in your sacred corner, not as one who doubts, but as one who knows. For the God who gave meaning to salt, the God who called you the salt of the earth, is the same God who will sanctify your house, keep your family, and bring His peace to rest upon you. Salt by itself is a grain, but salt with prayer is a covenant. Salt by itself is seasoning, but salt with prayer is sanctification. Salt by itself is temporary, but salt with prayer is eternal. And when you dare to join the two, you will see, you will know, you will taste and testify that the Lord is good, and that His mercy endures forever. Beloved child of God, let us step a little deeper into the mystery of what happens when you take that humble grain of salt, breathe upon it the fragrance of prayer, and place it in the sacred corner of your dwelling. Do not think it a small matter. Do not imagine that nothing changes. For in that act, so simple, so unassuming, the unseen world shifts, the atmosphere bends, and the spirit of your house begins to breathe in a rhythm aligned with heaven itself. Placing salt in the sacred corner of your home is not about decorating space. It is about declaring space. You are telling heaven and earth, angels and demons, the visible and the invisible, this house belongs to God. These walls will echo peace. These rooms will not harbor despair. This roof will shelter joy. This floor will bear the weight of prayer. When you act in faith, even a small grain becomes a proclamation, a trumpet blast into the unseen realm that light has claimed the territory and darkness must flee. Think of how salt works in the natural. It drives away decay. It keeps food from spoiling. It pushes back rot. Now translate that truth into your home. When you place salt in faith, you are declaring that corruption shall not set foot in your household. Quarrels will not fester. Bitterness will not rot relationships. Resentment will not creep into the heart. Instead, life shall be preserved. Love shall endure. Peace shall remain fresh as the morning dew. The same way salt keeps meat from going bad, the Spirit of God, working through your act of faith, keeps your home from spoiling under the weight of anger, strife, and despair. Have you ever walked into a room and felt heaviness pressing down upon your spirit? Have you entered a house where silence felt suffocating? Not because of peace, but because of hidden pain, unspoken tension, or lingering sorrow. Beloved, when you consecrate a corner of your home with salt and prayer, you change that atmosphere. You cleanse the air. You make the room light again, not with sunshine alone, but with the radiance of God's presence. And hear this truth. Darkness does not leave willingly. It clings. It hides. It seeks to make its home in the cracks and corners of our lives. But when you take salt, that ancient symbol of covenant, and pair it with prayer, that eternal language of faith, you drive darkness to the edge. You tell it, no more. Not in this place. Not in this house. Not in this family. And darkness, no matter how bold it pretends to be, must bow to the light. Now, imagine the peace that follows. Imagine waking in the morning and finding the air sweet, as if angels had walked through in the night. Imagine children resting easy in their beds, no longer tossing with troubled dreams. Imagine arguments dissolving more quickly, laughter finding its way back into conversations, joy slipping in through the cracks where sorrow once lingered. Beloved, this is not imagination alone, this is promise. For where God is welcomed, His peace becomes the air we breathe. And think of protection. Salt in the sacred corner, prayed over with faith, becomes like a sentinel. It stands as a watchman at the gates. Spirits of confusion that once crept in quietly find themselves unwelcome. Forces of oppression that once sought to press upon your chest in the midnight hour find no resting place. Even the hidden attacks, the whispered curses of those who wish you harm are rendered powerless, for the salt declares covenant, and covenant cannot be broken. Your home begins to transform. No longer just a shelter of wood, brick, or stone, it becomes sanctuary. It becomes a temple of the Most High, not because of walls, but because of presence. The presence of God moves in, rests upon the threshold, lingers in the hallways, and sings in the very air you breathe. What was once ordinary becomes holy ground. What was once just a corner becomes a place of divine encounter. I tell you, beloved, placing salt in your sacred corner is also an act of remembrance. It reminds you every day of God's promise. Each time your eyes fall upon that simple vessel of salt, you are reminded God keeps covenant, God preserves, God protects, God heals. When the storm rages outside, when bills pile up on the table, when worry knocks at the door, the salt whispers back, "Peace, be still. God has not forgotten you." And let me say this, salt in your sacred corner is not just for you alone. The blessing stretches. It moves beyond your chair, beyond your corner, beyond even your front door. It reaches the rooms where your children laugh and play. It follows your loved ones as they go out into the world. It greets your visitors, wrapping them in calm before they even know why they feel at ease. It covers your house like a shield, so that no matter what storms rage outside, within there is a stillness, a calm, a refuge. But remember this, beloved, it is not superstition. It is not ritual for ritual's sake. The salt without the prayer is just mineral. But salt with prayer is miracle. Salt with prayer is covenant made visible. Salt with prayer is peace poured into a vessel. Do not place it and forget it. Place it and pray. Place it and believe. Place it and watch. For what happens next is not small. What happens next is transformation. The sacred corner becomes a gate where heaven enters, a gate where angels pass through, a gate where burdens leave and blessings arrive, You will find yourself weeping there, and your tears will taste of healing. You will find yourself singing there, and your voice will rise with strength. You will find yourself kneeling there, and in the kneeling you will feel the everlasting arms lifting you high. And then, beloved, you will see the fruit. Arguments will soften. Worry will lose its grip. Dreams will become sweeter. Health will flourish. Protection will be felt. And joy, oh joy, will bubble up again in your house. Not because of salt alone, but because the salt reminded you to invite God in. And when God comes in, everything changes. So I say to you, do not overlook the small act. Do not dismiss the humble grain. Do not underestimate the sacred corner. Place the salt there with reverence. Pray over it with faith. Believe in it with courage. And then watch. Watch how your home shifts. Watch how your spirit lifts. Watch how peace becomes your companion and protection your cloak. Watch how your house becomes not just a dwelling place, but a dwelling of the Holy Spirit. Put salt in the sacred corner of your house, beloved, and pray. And then stand still, stand expectant, stand in awe, and see what happens next. Beloved, let us take a moment to marvel at the simplicity of God's work. For too often our eyes search for the grand, the dazzling, the thunderclap in the heavens, while His power rests quietly in the ordinary things placed all around us. There is a mystery in God's way. He makes the simple holy. He makes the overlooked powerful. And He makes the smallest gesture, when done with faith, bloom into miracles. A stone in a shepherd's sling brought down a giant. A jar of oil stretched to feed a widow's household. A mustard seed, the tiniest of all seeds, was declared enough to move mountains. And here we are today talking about salt, that humble crystal on our tables, in our kitchens, in our hands. It is not just seasoning, it is not just flavor. In the eyes of the eternal, it is a sign, a tool, a carrier of covenant. And so, when you place salt in a sacred corner of your house, you are not performing a ritual of man, but entering into the divine rhythm of God's simplicity. How remarkable it is that the Almighty, who holds galaxies in His palms, stoops down to meet us in the smallest of acts. He does not ask you to scale the highest mountain or cross the deepest ocean to prove your faith. He asks you to believe. He asks you to trust. He asks you to take the ordinary things in your reach and see them through His eyes. For when God breathes upon the ordinary becomes extraordinary. That is the key. Salt, when it lies forgotten in a jar, is nothing more than a grain. But when placed with prayer, when positioned with belief, it becomes a boundary line the enemy cannot cross. It becomes a reminder that God's promises are still alive in your home. Many people miss their blessing because they are waiting for the fireworks. They want the sky to split open. They want the miracle to come dressed in gold and silver. But hear me now, God often hides the greatest power in the smallest acts. He takes the little you have and stretches it beyond measure. He takes your whispered prayer and lets it echo in eternity. He takes the grain of salt and turns it into a wall of protection. He works through simplicity so that no man can boast, no woman can claim credit, and only His glory shines. So when you take that salt and place it in the sacred corner of your dwelling, understand what you are doing. You are declaring with your action, I trust God in the little things. You are saying, Lord, I believe that you can take this simple act and make it a fortress for my family. You are saying, Father, I may not have riches, I may not have power, I may not have connections, but I have faith. And with faith, I have everything I need. For what does Scripture say? If you are faithful in little, you will be faithful in much. Salt is little, but the God who blesses it is much. Do not despise the small beginning. Do not look down on the gentle gestures of obedience. It is in these that the Spirit of God often moves most freely. Remember Elijah's servant who went to look for rain. 6 times he saw nothing, but on the 7th he saw a cloud the size of a man's hand. Just a small cloud. But inside that cloud, God was carrying a flood of blessing. Just a handful of salt in the corner of your house may seem small, but inside that obedience, God is carrying peace, provision, and protection. Beloved, I want you to feel the rhythm of this truth in your soul. God is not trying to confuse you. He is not trying to hide from you. He is showing you that faith is not about the weight of what you hold, but the heart with which you hold it. A child's hand lifted in prayer can shift a household. A mother's tear shed in the midnight hour can cover her children. A father's blessing spoken in quiet tones can alter generations. Salt in the corner of your house can send angels to stand guard at your doors. The power is not in the salt itself. It is in the God who responds to faith through it. Have you not noticed? Life itself is built on the small things. A great tree grows from a small seed. A roaring fire begins with a tiny spark. A song that moves nations begins with one note. So why should it surprise you that God can use a small grain to hold back the flood of evil? That he can use a pinch of salt to usher in his peace? The devil is loud, but God is steady. The enemy shouts, but God whispers, and his whisper moves mountains. So I say to you, be not weary in doing the little acts of faith. Place the salt. Say the prayer. Light the candle. Read the verse. Speak the blessing. For these are not empty gestures. They are threads in the great tapestry of God's plan for your life. Every small act you